Hi guys, Bran here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today we're going to be talking about something that has been going through the Dead by Daylight community and kind of like a forest fire. It's spreading like a wildfire. It's getting all the DBD players up in a tizzy no matter what side you're on, no matter what kind of feeling you have about the game. It seems like everybody has a set and everybody has a take about this. So let's go ahead and talk about the Dead by Daylight community's war on perks. That was a good name, huh? I was thinking about that. That's a good name. That's a good name for this video. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about it. So the war on perks, obviously, if you can, look at thumbnails and your eyes are working, you see what two perks we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, this was brought up most recently in an ATTRIBUTION video where he talks about made for this. And yeah, we're going to react to that video. That's going to be coming later this week. So I'm not going to comment on that because, well, you're going to see exactly how I feel about it and how I talk about it later this week. But the tidbit here that you need to know is that it's got the DBD community in quite an uproar because from a lot of people's perspectives, Oddstarve and other major DBD streamers focus a little bit more on the killer side of things, and they think that the made for this outrage is completely overblown, and there's just even if they do agree, it's just there's so much focus on made for this that it seems like other problems that are progressing in the DBD community or have been prevalent for a long time and continue to get worse, continue to fester because there is so much focus on big, strong survivor perks. And the flip end of this is what usually people have been pointing out, whether it be on Twitter in their own videos. The way they turn that on their head, the way they point and go, well, what about this? The thing they're talking about is save the best for last, which is probably the strongest non-slowdown perk in the game for killer, and has been in a very, very strong state for a long time because of some adjustments they made to a base kit a long time ago. And the perk never has really been adjusted since those base kit changes, so people have been pointing out that it makes chase very, very oppressive and is good on all it's basically good on every character. Like, there are some characters that can't save stacks, which makes it weaker on them, but even on those characters, it's not necessarily a bad idea to run it. So it's kind of like this war of minds here. It's a war of ideas where one side seems to be completely complaining and getting super frustrated about made for this and wanting it nerfed, and other people will be like, well, what about save for this? Or not save for this, save for this. What about save the best for last? This perk has been a little bit too strong as well for a very long time, and nobody seems to care. So let's go ahead and talk about kind of like just very brief drive by what I think about both of these perks and things that I think would make them a little bit nicer to play against, so that everybody feels like their voice is being heard. So yeah, let's get into it. So first off, let's go ahead and talk about the big boogeyman in the room. Let's go ahead and talk about made for this. Now, I've already made more than one video about made for this. I made one dedicated video talking about made for this, and I made another react video to someone overreacting, I think, to made for this. And so I've put my thoughts out there a lot about made for this, but very, very shortly. So made for this' main problem for a lot of people is that 3% extra speed. The endurance is something that's very, very helpful and very, very nice, but most people use it just for the 3% speed that you have while you are injured, because being 103 speed obviously means you make some things you don't, or you're able to chain tiles a little bit better, etc. Essentially, it makes your looping and furthermore more boring, your W keying, even more powerful than before. This obviously creates a lot of situations with characters like Trickster, I would say, where Trickster kind of gets really hard shut down by this perk, because being 110 and not having a ranged attack that can do an injury state just because you hit it, you have to get a bunch of those little knives in order to hurt someone. That makes playing against an injured survivor as Trickster pretty miserable. Obviously, this also adversely affects a lot of the M1 killers who may not have a utility. Obviously, characters like Ghostface and Myers do have the ability to just insta down the survivor, but you end up in a situation where once they're injured, they can just play injured from that point on and kind of delete the utility of your ability to get around the perk. But on the flip side, in order to play devil's advocate, because I do think this perk is a little overhated, the killers do have a lot of utility to deal with this. Even M1 killers like Clown have literally slow bottles that you can literally throw and slow down the people. You literally just take away that haste effect from them. You have Destiny, who can literally harpoon them and reel them to you. You have Oni and Blight, who have speed abilities that can just outrun them. There's plenty of killers that have, and I would say most of the killers have some sort of utility to deal with a sudden speed boost. So it's not like it's the end of the world and it's the worst thing in the universe. But if we're going to talk about things that we could do to make made for this better, things that I would do, things that I would change, is that I would kind of more align it with something like Off the Record, where Off the Record has very, very strong and extreme abilities like complete, the essentially free built-in Iron Will, and you get the endurance effect, and it lasts for a really, really long time. Put it on a timer. Put it on a timer. Put that stuff on a timer. Like, maybe when you get injured with Made for this, you're faster for a little bit. Because what ends up happening is people will end up with Made for this, they'll start playing injured like the entire game. Instead of just like, oh, okay, well, we're going to play injured for a little bit and then heal up together. So if you want to inspire people to, not be constantly on Made for this, give it a timer. People still get Made for this value because once you hit them initially, once you smack them initially, they're going to get that 3% Made for this for the rest of that chase. And depending on how long you make that timer, you can have it potentially for a second chase. But the idea here is that it only lasts for a chase or two, preferably probably just one. And then, it's probably a better idea just to heal up and get rid of it. That way, you are still getting a lot of value out of this and still getting the effect without changing the perk too dramatically. But, obviously you have a timer. So you have to get the mostest out of it in a short period of time, and you can't just like play injured the whole game and just kind of like negate certain killers. Now let's go ahead and talk about Save the Best for Last. Save the Best for Last, like I mentioned earlier, kind of got there were certain people that never really liked Save for Best for Last on the Survivor side of things. It is objectively, and even before it's buffed, it's accidental buff, it's inadvertent buff, was already probably the strongest non-slowdown perk in the game. Probably Save the Best for Last and No Way Out are probably arguably the two strongest non-slowdown perks in the game for killer. And Save got inadvertently buffed because in the 6.10 patch update, they gave partial Save the Best for Last base kit to killers just outright. You essentially now, after the 6.10 update last year, you essentially have 2 stacks of Save the Best for Last at any given point on killer, period. And they can never be taken away. So while you may see that when you get a full 8 stacks of Save for Best for Last, you get up to 8, right? 8 stacks fully. Realistically, you're actually at 10. Realistically, you have actually 2 extra, stacks there that you're just not seeing, and you basically only go down to 2 at any given point, which is really, really strong. Really, really strong. It's really, really good. And it was always a puzzling thing for me why they gave 2 stacks base kit for killer and did not resend it back to 6 as a max, because I thought that would just be like the obvious thing is like, okay, well, if we give them 2 base, we should probably take the 2 off the top, and they just didn't do that. And probably the rationale behind that was like, hey, there are M1 killers that are going to really super benefit from that, that superficial 10 stacks of Save the Best for Last. Like on a trapper, I'm not really going to complain that he has 10 stacks of Save for Best for Last, on like characters like, like Deathslinger, characters like even Spirit, like, whoo, getting hit with that 10 stacks immediately into a harpoon, down, Spirit hits you, that artificial 10 stacks, activation speed add-on immediately phasing on top of you. Like, Dave can have some pretty nasty and pretty uncounterable situations in this game that really boil down to just like the RNG of what's around you. And those things do feel bad. So I don't know why they didn't cap it at 6. Obviously, that'd probably be the thing I would do, is just like cap it at 6. Cap it at 6 stacks. That way you are artificially at 8. You do have the old version of Save the Best for Last. Because Save the Best for Last, like I said, even before the 6.10 update, probably was still the strongest non-slowdown perk in the game. So yeah, just cap it at 6. Also, the other thing that I did want to talk about with Save for the Best for Last is that a lot of people don't like Save the Best for Last because it means one player essentially sits out most of the game, which I do agree with that. And I do play it that way personally a lot too. So it's something that I've put on other people, and it's something that I have felt boredom from playing on the Survivor side. It's like, okay, well, I'm the obsession. So unless I'm going out of my way to take hits to make them intentionally lose stacks, I'm going to get ignored the whole game. So there is a plight to be made about like the fact that the perk kind of has some negative effects on interactivity in the game, because it just means you're focusing down 3 people and ignoring 1 person, and that 1 person basically just gets left to do gens, and that's basically it. In terms of ideas to fix this, I've seen a lot of really good ideas. I think the one that I saw, and I forgot who it was. The wall of Twitter goes by, and I forget like who posts what a lot. But there was a really, really good idea I saw, that once you cap out at 8 stacks of Save for Best for Last, you hit that max. Well, in our world, that'll be 6. But once you cap out, once you get your highest number of Save the Best for Last stacks, you essentially like peak and then the obsession switches to someone else. That way, when you hit max, you know, you've already put a lot of pressure on the team so far, so it's not like you're getting like robbed of your pressure or anything. This will incentivize you to perhaps go chase the person that just became like the person that had been the obsession all the time, to actually go chase them for the first time. And the person that you get switched to the obsession obviously has had some you know, some hook states probably enacted upon them at this point, so it airs out the flow of gameplay a little bit, rather than just like, you know, what essentially boils down to just focusing out 2 people really quickly with save the best for last, and then kind of like, you know, killing the last guy, and then the obsession, you know, is the last chase, because that's just kind of like the flow of gameplay right now. If the obsession actually switched, you couldn't, or not that you couldn't, but it would be at least disadvantageous to continue chasing one of the people that you've gotten stacks off of, because you would be then losing stacks. But obviously this synergizes well on the killer end of things, because, you know, killer's always looking fun stuff to do like obsession roulette with. Obviously when Game of Foot came out, a lot of people were happy that that was another perk they could use for obsession roulette. Obviously save the best for last, having some sort of built-in thing to also do some obsession roulette with would be kind of fun, and obviously synergize with those builds. So I think that would be a good way to kind of offset kind of like the negative gameplay flow of save for best for last, and obviously cap it out at 6. So yeah. So these are my thoughts. I think these would both be kind of rather fair changes that would kind of keep the spirit of the perks mostly intact, but and still get the main idea, the main use out of them, still used it match to match, but not as prevalent and game-changing as they happen to be in the current meta. So let me know what you think of my thoughts, friends. Thank you so much for watching today, but I do upload daily, so I will see you tomorrow. But if I do not, I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.